Welcome to Catapult Leaders Conversation with Leaders. Listen in and take notes as Catapult Leaders CEO Daryl Mobley chats with Dwain Celistan about how to flourish in the fishbowl when you're the only or one of the few. Dwain Celistan is Executive Vice President and Global Diversity Practice Leader at DHR International.
Life in a fishbowl, how to thrive when you're one of the few. And this is important as you enter the world of corporate America, because you just never know the situation you're going to walk into, and you need to be ready to succeed at anything. And that's why today I'm thrilled to be able to chat this with Dwain Celistan. Dwain, I'm going to jump right into it. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
Thank you, sir. So lots of new employees who are Black are challenged when they find out, and they start in a company, they find out that they are the only or one of the very few Black junior managers in the company. Have you ever observed this?
You know, I have observed it. And for some people, it's a shock based on where you may have come from your community or your institutions of higher learning. So you may have not been exposed to a situation where you're essentially the only one. And I have seen it. Most people navigate it comfortably because we're, especially in the US, we're all Americans, so you speak the same language and you have enough similarities to not be overwhelmed by being a unique entity in this situation. But there's some discomfort, but most people couch it fairly well. Like you don't always know it's their first time being around a very different group of folks.
Okay, all right. Let me get, if you don't mind, I'll get a little personal here for a second. Did you or have you experienced this?
Oh, on many occasions. In my, early in my career, late in my career, I also lived in the UK where I was actually the only one in the whole building. They had a South African guy in the manufacturing facility in another building, but I was the only African, only Black guy in the whole building.
Wow.
So one of the things that's interesting about that is that like that movie, All Eyes on Me. All eyes are there because you just stick out. You're just different. But I think for your viewers, it's almost as though if you had a meeting with your normal group, your normal class group or what have you, and you had a student from another country to come and be a part of that group, group of 30, group of 20, group of 100, whatever the number is, that person is just different and they will stand out. Whether they're trying to stand out or not, they're just different from everyone else. They may have a slight accent, visually they may look different, but they will be different. And so that's essentially almost the definition of diversity. You're a person that's different than everyone else.
Okay.
And in corporate America, we as Black people tend to have more opportunities to fall in that category.
That's right. What a blessing. What impact have you seen being the only one, being in the fishbowl all alone? What impact have you seen that have on people in that situation?
Most people do well. Most people do well. I think one of the things that I sometimes forget, because you get in the heat of battle and you're still living in your own skin. So you tend to just forget that you're being you and that, oh, that's right, I'm the only one of me in this particular work group or environment. And so one of the things I think is an opportunity, particularly if you're going into it for the first time, to think strategically, because I sometimes wasn't as strategic in thinking about it on the front end as I could have been, and consistently be strategic. So by strategic, I mean, say, well, how do I want to show up? Which is a strategy, as opposed to I'm just showing up.
Right.
So how do I want to show up? Knowing that since I'm the different one, and everybody's been in a situation where there was the person that visited or something like that, well, you talk about them after they leave, right? Because they were different. So they're going to talk about you. Well, what do you want them to say about you? So if you're strategic and say, I want them to say A, B, and C about me, is different than just showing up and being yourself. Because it's not about showing up and being yourself. It's showing up knowing that you will be the unique entity in this environment. And they will talk about you after you leave the environment. So what is it you want them to say about you? Well, I made good comments, handled myself well, was friendly, was personable. Whatever those things you want them to take away about you, favorable professional adjectives, you should already know. And that could be just who you are as a professional, as a person. But you want to make sure those things come out and not allow them to fill in the blanks with their own adjectives.
Okay.
Because people will fill in the blanks if you don't give them something.
Right.
So if you just stay quiet and you don't interact, or you're allowing them to make up their own narrative about this quiet person.
Okay.
So it's not that you need to be the loudest person in the room or any of those things, but be yourself, but know that you need to think through, well, what are the things I want them to think about me and say about me post this interaction?
Wow. What you're talking about is be real clear on what your brand is, what your personal brand is, and project that out. So as you said, you don't have to be the loudest person, but it's hard to project your brand without speaking up, without engaging, without showing initiative. So you got to do those things. Very good. Okay. All right. Can you give me 3 to 5 tips for ways in which a new Black entry level employee can flip being one of the few or the only from being a cause of stress and underperformance to being the foundation of their success?
I think one is, once you think about your brand, which I think is well said, what do I want to stand for as a new professional? You know, a diligent worker, someone who's prepared, someone who's eager to learn more because you're early. So you want to be a learner and a doer, but a learner and a doer at the same time. You want to make sure, and you're open to learning, open to feedback. I think you want those things to come through in your messaging. I think you want to be not overly thoughtful in everything you say where you're uncomfortable, but I think you want to have thought through the topic that's going to be covered. Have a couple of questions that you've thought through in advance that may be appropriate for that situation. Maybe have an outline, but preparation for the situation. And I think as you live through that first year, that second year, the comfort increases, you know, with each passing week. But I think throughout that first, second year, I think being prepared and thinking it through a little bit more than just showing up will be a huge advantage. And the other advantage that I think is key that many new people would like to have, let's say there are 50 new people hired and you're one of the 50. And now you're in this location where you're the only one in this work environment, work group, what have you. Everybody's looking at you. And for some of your colleagues, they will blend into the larger team and not be as evident. So you have an opportunity to leverage this awareness to your advantage because one, it is an awareness. You're not going to hide. So now that you know that that's part of the experience that you have, how do you make it work? And I recall early in our career, Daryl, you and I did that very thing. We knew we'd be standing out in our work group on our whole floor, actually, which was quite a number of people in a large building. So we were the only 2. So we knew they would be looking at us and they knew they'd mix us up periodically. So we also wanted to make sure that we were always caught doing what we were supposed to do. And whatever those things are that you're supposed to do in your role, you know what they are. They give you some guidance. And if you aren't as clear, you know, make sure you take some people one-on-one that are more senior than yourself and ask them about what's it take to be successful here and what are the expectations. I think those are fair questions. And if you start hearing consistency, because just in case somebody is not being helpful. If you ask 3 or 4 people and they have similar comments about the things that it takes to be successful and be good at your area of responsibility, then those are the behaviors that you want to demonstrate on a daily basis.
You are listening to a Catapult Leaders podcast. For more information, visit catapultleaders.com.
If I can follow up from one area there, because it was really, really good. So a person, you basically talk about the brand and then being proactive, being strategic and being proactive in your strategy, making sure you go and then seeking information. All those are fantastic things. So let's say that a person, a lot of people, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but they come out of college and maybe in college, they only dealt with people who were similar to them, which is kind of the way life works, right? People tend to deal with people who are similar to them. And then they engage with them and they party with them and they hang out with them and they chat with them and they play things with them. Okay. And then they go to this area in which they're unusual visually for whatever reason. How important is it for that person? And what do you have any thoughts on how that person can make sure they're engaging with their peers as well and really leveraging the power of personal relationships?
Wow, that is really important, because your peers will learn things as well. So some of your peers will have relationships one way or another with the organization. They may have a relative that works there or a friend from their school or who knows what. Right. But some of your peers will have more knowledge about this environment than perhaps you do. So there's tons to be learned from that. And also, over the course of your career, the people you work with and you start with are relationships and part of your greater network that will be with you can be with you for your entire career if you so desire. Right. So I think that, and you're also still going through the newness of being, hey, we're part of this new group of recent hires, kind of thing. So I do think having those relationships is important. But creating, I think, and to your point, everyone's not super outgoing. That's not everyone's demeanor, that they would just knock on someone's door and ask for 15 minutes to hear about what it takes to be successful.
Although you did, and I did, and I did. So we might suggest people do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I was thinking about some of the people in my family are less assertive on that.
Yes.
Naturally assertive. Right. They would more observe it rather than ask for it. Right. But I do think in your career, it's not all about where your comfort zone is, because if your comfort zone is not asking, that could be one of the things that prevents you from realizing the maximum potential that you could have. So sometimes you have to expand beyond what has historically been your comfort zone, because what you may find is, hey, this worked just fine. The people are nice. It wasn't that difficult. Whatever the reason you may be uncomfortable was not really based in reality. It was just in your own thought process that, oh, that person's from a different fill in the blank. And so I thought they might fill in the blank. And until you actually interact with those persons and ask them and spend some time with them, and then you may find out, well, frankly, it is not all that much different. We have a whole host of things that are in common. And not only that, this person proved to be very, very helpful for me. And we created this rapport and relationship that's a great professional relationship. I mean, everybody's not going to be necessarily your best friend. That's not the goal. But professionally, you will need many others to help you to realize your ultimate success. Be they in your same work group or other work groups, more senior than you, peers in other departments. You'll need that broader family to realize the possibilities, and also to learn that maybe the work group you're in now is not as fun for you or as this other work group that you're getting exposure to. So by meeting and interacting with others, you may learn that there's this other work group that's really appealing to you. And if you're early in your career, you start where you start, but that doesn't mean you end where you start.
Right. In fact, if you do, you probably didn't do too well. If you end where you started, you probably didn't do too well, because you got to move and grow.
That's not the desired point.
That's exactly. I mean, you got to grow and develop. Well, this has been fantastic. I'm going to take one big thing from the last thing you said there, and that is that I'll see if you agree with this. That sometimes the issue is not that they are uncomfortable with you. Sometimes you may be uncomfortable with them, and so the change that needs to happen is both internal as well as also strategy and the plans you're talking about. Because if the problem is in you, then you've got to remove that problem to realize the greatest possibility for you professionally, personally, and all those wonderful things. As you said, those people you're with are in all likelihood going to become, at minimum, key professional relationships forever. That's what I'm forever. You will know them and they will know you and remember you, and can be, you and I chatted about this before, they can be your biggest advocates. When you're not in the room, when you're not around, those people who are invested in you as a person will step up and talk about you and recommend you for things and say, this person over here. And it's just, there's a lot going on. And I want people to do what you said at first, be proactive, take initiative, be strategic. So that's super important. And I think if they do that, then life in a fishbowl won't be all bad. In fact, it won't be bad at all. You just accept it, swim. And what happens is the more you do this, the bigger you get. And eventually, what happens? You, as that fish, you become too big for the fishbowl. Yes. And then you break out. But you got to do that. You can't stay small. You got to get big. And I think any other thoughts before I let you get back to your busy day?
No, I think that's really a great capture, and frankly, given our percentage of the population and the number of us actually in corporate America, as they're entrepreneurs and people working in government and educational environments, we're never going to be an overwhelming number.
Right.
And as I've observed, as I've gotten to be more senior in my career, as I go up in more senior roles, there are fewer of us around, for a whole host of reasons. So practicing those skills will pay dividends over the life of your career. Mm-hmm. And there may be opportunities. You can create your own organization and have a different blend of employees and coworkers. But as long as you're in some other person's corporation, high likelihood that you will, in many instances, find yourself in a work group or in a business setting where you are the only one or one of a very small number. Mm-hmm. And so building that muscle is a good muscle to build on, because you'll be using it for many, many years to come.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time. You take care and you have a great day.
All right. Thanks a lot.
You got it.
You've listened to Catapult Leaders, Conversation with Leaders. Special thanks to Dwain Celistan.
Be sure and go to catapultleaders.com so that you can apply to the Catapult Leaders program if you are a college student or grad student or a recent graduate. If you are a company leader looking to up-level your company by hiring outstanding new employees, please go to catapultleaders.com and contact us. Let's go.